It's often said there's a very thin line between love and hate. Many of us find ourselves navigating that line every single day, whether it's with friends, family, or coworkers. I can't believe I used to like that guy. What a jerk. Or, you're great, but, ugh, my personal favorite? I hate that. Then there are those people who love to preach about the human condition, always telling you to let go of your hate or to be more humane. They're the ones saying, you need to show compassion. As for me, I'm more concerned about my own condition and my family's. Having friends is great, but let's be real. You can only trust some friends as far as you can throw them. In my case, not all my friends or family had my back, which was a hard and painful lesson to learn. But in the end, I discovered who my real allies were. My name is Pace Jensen. I'm 29 years old, a former soccer player, and a passionate runner. I'm married to Amy, a stunning mom with a fiery attitude that fits her perfectly. But the best part of my life? Being the dad to 3 amazing little boys. At the time everything fell apart, Amy and I had been married for 7 years. We had kids quickly and often because I just couldn't get enough of her. I lived and breathed Amy. That's where my downfall began. I think we exchanged vows the day after graduating from UMass. Amy had a degree in secondary education, while I earned mine in management information systems. Amy landed a job at a prestigious private school in Dallas, while I started working at Empire Funding. We got off to a solid start in life. Like any marriage, ours had its share of ups and downs, but nothing major. I think our first real argument was over me wanting to buy a 1968 Shelby Cobra GT500. It was a 2-door fastback, complete with a 302 cubic inch V8 engine. To top it all off, it was candy apple red with 2 white racing stripes. And unlike some dreamers, I could afford the $100,000 price tag. I've always loved classic cars. Overall, Amy and I had a good life. We lived near my family, which I thought was a blessing at the time. My parents were in their 50s, and I had a younger brother named Rob who was 17. Rob attended the high school where Amy worked, and she even taught his class. Rob was kind of the odd one out, being 12 years younger than me. Rob and I were close as you can get to a much younger sibling. Whenever something happened or Rob needed something, it was always me expected to make the sacrifice. That was the unspoken rule in our family. Be brave. Be a hero, son. Help your little brother and you'll be better off for it. My dad would say so often that it became background noise. Another great constant in my life was my best friend, Jeffrey Parks. Jeff was the brother I always wished I had. We'd been inseparable since the 3rd grade, and if anyone understood me, it was him. Jeff, an attorney, was someone I could always count on, especially when it came to legal matters. Everything seemed normal last Monday when I came home. Amy mentioned she'd taken the boys to her sister's house, just 4 houses down. I thought this meant we'd have some time alone, if you catch my drift. But Amy told me she had something important to say. At that moment, I thought life couldn't get any better. Then she dropped the bomb. Amy was pregnant. I was ecstatic. I immediately asked when the baby was due so we could start preparing. I couldn't stop hoping for a little girl to spoil rotten. But Amy's expression didn't match my excitement. She looked distant, even troubled. "What's wrong?" I asked. Amy hesitated, then finally said, "Pace, it's not your baby." At first, I thought I'd misheard her. "What are you saying? Why do you look so upset?" Amy sighed. "Pace, I love you, but I can't have any more of your kids." Confused, I reminded her how much she always wanted a big family. "What changed?" I asked. Amy's face hardened as if bracing for impact. "This isn't easy to say." She began pacing, her words circling endlessly, like whatever she had to admit would rewrite our lives. "I love you no matter what," I said. "Just say it." Then she stopped, pulled out her phone, and hit speed dial. "Could you come over?" she asked the person on the other end. The pit in my stomach deepened. "Amy, who's coming over? What's so hard to tell me that you need help?" My mind raced with dark thoughts, but I wasn't prepared for what followed. 2 minutes later, the doorbell rang. Amy opened it, and when she returned, my parents and my 17-year-old brother Rob were with her. "Okay, Amy, what is this?" I demanded. Before she could speak, Rob stepped forward. Look, Pace, Amy's in love with me. That's what she's trying to say. Mom and Dad are here to support us, he said bluntly. The baby she's carrying, it's mine. And we're going to be a family, with or without your blessing. For a moment, I laughed. This had to be a joke, right? But no one else was laughing. Tell me this isn't true, I begged Amy. My dad chimed in, son, I know this is hard, but what's done is done. Rob is your brother. You'll have to find a way to live with this. It's what families do. I turned to my mom for some semblance of reason. Mom, you're in on this too? She looked me straight in the eye. Pace, I love you both. I don't want this to tear our family apart. You have to find it in your heart to do the right thing. At that moment, any love I had for my family turned to ash. The thin line between love and hate had been obliterated. I stormed out, Amy and my mother trailing behind, begging me to listen. Rob grabbed Amy's arm and pulled her back. I made my way to her sister's house to pick up my kids, only to be met by a sheriff's deputy. Rachel, Amy's sister, looked as stunned as I was. The deputy sheriff informed me that I wasn't allowed to see my kids until the court determined custody. I stood there, feeling the hatred within me intensify with every second that passed. I asked the sheriff if I could at least go back to my own house. He asked whose name was on the mortgage. I told him it was mine and only mine. Since there wasn't any order preventing me from returning home, I turned to leave. As I passed my father, he grabbed my hand. Pace, son, listen to me. Please don't do anything you'll regret later, my father pleaded. My mother chimed in. We all need to sit down and discuss this as adults. I stared him in the eye and said, don't call me son ever again. Now, let go of my hand before you regret it for the rest of your life. Stay the hell away from me, all of you. Every last one of you backstabbing traitors. Turning to Amy, I added, if I were you, I'd start looking for a good lawyer because, trust me, you're going to need one. Enjoy the kids while you can because it won't last long. Now get out of here. Take all of this garbage with you. I didn't even get to take another step before Rob lunged at me. His punch connected with the right side of my face, but before I could fully react, my dad grabbed me from behind, holding me still as Rob swung at me again. Luckily for me, Rob's punches were weak and clumsy, or things could have ended much worse. At that moment, the sheriff leaped off the porch, tackled Rob to the ground, and cuffed him. Breaking free of my father's grip, I swung and hit him square in the mouth. He fell backward, stunned, with an expression of pure disbelief, like he couldn't fathom that his sensible son could reach such levels of anger. The fight ended with Rob and my father both being arrested for assault. I didn't realize then that things were only beginning to spiral further out of control. 2 days later, I got a call from the assistant district attorney, asking me to testify. While explaining the situation, I casually mentioned that my 29-year-old wife of 7 years was pregnant with my 17-year-old brother's child. I also pointed out that Rob was a high school senior at the same school where Amy worked as a teacher. That seemed to get their attention. Not long after, I reached out to the only person I thought I could trust, Jeffrey Parks, my childhood friend and an attorney. I showed up at his office, optimistic that he'd help me. But life had another lesson in betrayal waiting for me. While waiting for him, I saw Jeff step out with his new client, Amy. She glanced over, smirking at me. My heart sank. Looking Jeff in the eye, I said, "You'd better make this worth it, Jeff." Jeffrey didn't even acknowledge me. He just turned and walked away with her. I couldn't believe he'd chosen her over me after everything we'd been through. But you know what? It didn't matter why he did it. Once he made that choice, he ceased to exist for me. I wrote him off completely. It was just another reason to let my hatred grow. A fire that continued to reshape me. Desperate, I turned to another lawyer, Stevie Crust. Known for his aggressive tactics, Stevie's motto was simple. If you've got the cash, I'll handle the rest. I caught him just as he was closing up for the day and pitched my case, promising it would soon be all over the news. Seeing dollar signs, Stevie unlocked his door and invited me in. I handed him a $10,000 check up front and warned him he might have to bail me out down the line. He chuckled and said he wouldn't be part of anything illegal. When I explained my plans, he laughed so hard he spat out his gum. Returning home later that evening, I noticed a sheriff's deputy parked in the driveway. He handed me an envelope and said, "You've been served." I didn't even bother opening the papers. I tossed them straight into the trash. I made a few calls, grabbed a quick snack, and went to bed, figuring tomorrow would bring new battles. The next morning, I stepped outside to grab the paper, and bam, they pounced on me. A swarm of reporters. "Mr. Jensen, is it true your wife is a teacher who's pregnant by your underage brother?" One yelled. "What school does she work at?" Another shouted. "Why hasn't she been arrested?" A third chimed in. "I don't know," I replied curtly, slamming the door behind me. From that point, life turned into a circus. Reporters camped out at Amy's school, my parents' house, Jeff's office, and Amy's sister's place. Jeff, who once loved publicity, wasn't prepared for this kind. When he first took Amy's case, he was under the impression that Rob was 18, not 17. The discovery infuriated him, but things only got worse when family rights activists picketed his office. One even doused him with cow urine. 2 days later, I appeared on Nancy Grace. The host tore Amy apart, calling her every name under the sun. If you've ever watched Nancy Grace, you know she doesn't let go of a story once she's latched onto it. Amy, Rob, and my parents were publicly dragged through the mud. Amy was arrested soon after, facing charges of statutory rape, breach of public trust, and abuse. Rob was taken into juvenile custody and would remain there until he turned 18. A month later, we found ourselves in court. Amy was represented by Jeff, the friend who'd betrayed me. The only person I felt any sympathy for was my mother. She looked utterly devastated. Amy and my former parents had begged me to sit down with them beforehand to work things out. I had only one question for Amy. "Did you sit down and talk to me before you slept with my brother?" Her silence gave me all the answers I needed. After Amy's arrest, I was granted full custody of my children, along with child support and the house. Amy never went to trial, opting for a plea deal instead. She received 3.5 years in prison and would be a registered sex offender for life. At her sentencing, she apologized to me, and for a moment, I almost pitied her. Almost. 4 years have passed since then. I moved 2,000 miles away with my kids and built a new life. I even remarried a motorcycle cop also named Amy. She's nothing like my ex-wife. I had to work hard to win her over, but once I did, she changed my life. It hasn't been easy rebuilding trust, but we make it work. We test each other, and somehow it keeps us strong. Most importantly, I genuinely love her, and I'll never let history repeat itself.